So as a seminarian, we have summer assignments. Once we're done with school, they often assign us to a parish, as I'm sure many of you know, just from the amount of seminarians that have come through in the summers. But my first summer assignment, I was placed at St. Mary's in Byron, Illinois. And it was a really nice assignment. I was just a new seminarian, so I can help with too many things, but a lot of my summer was spent just kind of shadowing Father Howard Barch, who was the pastor of the parish then. And so, I'd kind of just follow and do everything. And so our typical Sunday routine was me serving the masses. And after we finished the last mass, we would go to the nursing home. And Father Howard Barch would always bring communion to this one individual named Al. And his wife was always there. And, so we did this week after week, and again, I started to put things together. I realized that his wife, Marcia, was a daily mass goer. She was always there. And, the thing is, I probably wouldn't have known much more about Marcia and Al if it hadn't been for the fact that I think it was either after Mass or another time we were doing a visit, Marcia just kind of took me aside and told me the story of her and Al. So Al was just, when I first met him, it was a stroke. He had a very severe stroke, and so he wasn't really able to communicate too much. He had very nonverbal and stuff like that too. He'd make some noises too, but what I remember is he was just always smiling. He was just always smiling. And Marcia shared me the story of her and her husband, and she said, I think it was a little bit later in their life, they kind of had this reversion, where they came back to the faith, and they were really involved in pro-life ministries. And in their reversion, and as they grew deeper in their faith, both of them together, they both came to a point where they wanted to kind of consecrate their lives to Jesus in service of Him. And so there was this day, and they consecrated themselves to the Lord, and then right after that, Al had a stroke. And so for 16 years, Marcia has gone to daily Mass and been at his bedside for 16 years. And it's pretty incredible, this story of faith that they asked the Lord, we're ready to do anything for you, and Al gets a stroke. And Marcia, a woman of very strong faith, and her commitment to her marriage and her vows, has been there every single morning after daily Mass for 16 plus years. And so in the Gospel today, we get Jesus' second prophecy of Jesus' passion, that he must be handed over, that he must be killed, but he will rise on the third day. And, last week we heard about the first prophecy of his passion, and do you remember what Peter's response was to this prophecy that Jesus, the Messiah, has to suffer and die? Peter rebukes him. He says that can't be the way. And Jesus' response to Peter is one of the most severe reprimands of the entire gospel. And so today, do the apostles do any different than Peter? No. What it says is they don't understand. This idea of a suffering servant doesn't fit into their preconceived notions of what the Messiah is supposed to be. To them, the Messiah is supposed to be this great leader, this political force that's going to free them from the Romans. That's their preconceived notion. They can't even imagine that he would be this one who turns the other cheek, that picks up the cross, that suffers and dies. Mark is not trying here, and the funny thing too is just like, as Peter rebukes Jesus, what do the apostles do afterwards? They start talking about who is the greatest, just again showing that they really don't understand what's going on. And Mark brings attention to this fact of them trying to call out who is the greatest, not that in order for us as readers to marvel at their just inadeptness of what's going on with Jesus' mission, but he's trying to bring us face to face with our own human tendencies to seek out our own glory and our own kind of fear to face the cross. We want glory, but we fear the cross. Jesus teaches us that there is no glory without the cross. Why do we fear the cross? Because we fear suffering. And rightly so. Suffering sucks. There's no way about it. It's not fun. I can't sugarcoat it. Suffering is not fun. But one of the greatest lies that pervades, is constantly perpetuated, is that if you avoid the cross, if you turn away from God and seek wealth and possessions and positions, and let's say you get these things, that you get it your way, that you're able to have the job you want, the house you want, the vacations you want, to do with your Sundays what you want, that you'll be able to avoid suffering. The truth is, avoid the cross, and suffering will still find you. Illness, loss, sickness, death, it will still find you. There will be no glory after death. To pick up the cross and follow Jesus is to take ownership of our suffering. To say, I'm not going to run away, but I'm going to run towards you, Jesus. I'm going to run towards you. Come what may. And when we, like Jesus, willingly hand ourselves over to the will of the Father, our very suffering changes. It doesn't go away, but we are no longer its victims. By the grace of God, just as God was able to make man's sin, betrayal, and hatred an instrument to bring about the redemption of the world, our suffering too can be redemptive for ourselves and others. Al passed away within a year after I'd first met him. And the last time I saw Marcia would have been probably a year after my summer assignment there at Byron. And so it's been quite a while. It's been 6+ years. But I remember Al's smile. And I remember Marge's faith and hope and courage. And I remember where it came from. A God who also says, I will give you rest. Come to me, you who are burdened, and I will give you rest. I will be with you always. A God who makes himself the servant of all. A God who fed and sustained Marcia and Al with his body and blood, and who wants to feed you today. I don't know if you're like me, but I'm here again at the altar this morning because I'm a coward and I'm afraid of the cross. But I'm also here because of my faith and hope that if he can transform bread and wine to his own body and blood, he can transform my cowardice into courage and my suffering into glory. I'm here because when I have embraced the cross at times, I have experienced some of the most profound joy and peace that I had no right to expect. God, give us the courage today to embrace the cross.